Hi, my name is Jeff H. Sipe from PracticeInterviews.com, and in today's video, we are going to focus in on assumptions, and specifically, how do you utilize assumptions when answering open-ended questions? And it's a little bit tricky. It's tricky to figure out kind of what it is, when to use them, and specifically why we're using them. And really early on in this video, I'm going to bring in that sample answer so that we can really guide and navigate the rest of this video through that lens. If you like my content, please like. If you have any comments, please comment below. And if you like my overall content, please subscribe. Item 1, CFAS. So we've talked a lot about the CFS methodology, and I want to change that methodology moving forward, specifically to add in assumptions. So what are those 4 components that we're talking about? We're talking about clarify, framework, assumption, solution. And so let's break that down a little bit more. So clarify, you're going to ask clarifying questions to any open-ended question, and you're going to focus in on either or yes or no questions. The framework. Talked a lot about this. These are high-level concepts or items that are really going to help you present a lot of information very quickly and narrow your focus down. Think 30 seconds or less. Assumptions. These are going to come before diving into the solution, and essentially they're there to lead and guide you, fill in the gaps, and get you focused. And then lastly, the solution. Based off of building on those assumptions, we're going to really niche down, narrow down, so our interviewer can envision us in the role. So for item 2, sample answer, let's dig in. We're going to not get all the way into the weeds of this sample answer, but just for flow, we're going to talk through it because I think it will help set the context and stage for the rest of this video. So we're going to assume that we are a sales engineer interviewing for a GCP role, that's Google Cloud Platform. And as always, we are going to introduce our lovely interviewer, Sue. And so let's go through the prompt and go through the question and set the stage. So, Jeff, how would you evolve a customer's business utilizing GCP? Okay, Sue, it's a great question. And the first question I would need to know is this a new or existing customer? Then we would pause, see if Sue gives us any feedback. Okay, Sue, a couple of other questions that I would have is I'd really like to understand my relationship with the customer. For example, have I ever spoken with them, yes or no? And I'd also like to know who my audience is. Am I speaking with somebody technical or non-technical? I would also like to understand the size of the company. Are they an SMB or a large company? And of course, understanding the industry, regulated or non-regulated. And lastly, just kind of understanding where are they in their overall cloud journey. Obviously, we're establishing that they're looking to evolve their business using GCP, but are they already using GCP, or maybe they're using a competitor like AWS? Maybe they're in a hybrid cloud model, or they're completely on-prem. These would be a bunch of questions that I would have. Sue, can you answer any of those questions for me? Again, we've asked a lot of questions, so we would pause again, and then we'd move into the framework. So, Sue, in order to evolve this customer's business by utilizing GCP, there's a few high-level items or concepts we should be talking about right away. First is ease of use. I want to make sure it's easy to use. I would focus in on that overall cost. I'm probably going to focus in on security because that's going to be important for any company. And then things like, is it scalable, flexible, and ultimately, are we making sure that we're automating? Sue, I think we should start with ease of use, but is there a specific area that you'd like to focus in on? Okay, Sue, let's make a few assumptions to start. Let's assume new customer, that they're medium-sized in the e-commerce space, and essentially they've been on-prem, so they're looking to migrate their applications to the Google Cloud using GCP Compute Engine. And the reason why ease of use is going to be critical to focus in on these initial conversations, regardless of whether they're technical or non-technical, is because Compute Engine is going to allow them to do some great things like reduce risk, improve agility, save time, and all of this will make it easier on the organization. And then, of course, we would dive a little bit deeper, a little bit more into that solution. For the sake of this conversation, I just really wanted to focus in on setting the stage so we could build those good assumptions. So now let's talk through it. Now let's put it all together and focus in on a few items that are going to help us really set the stage with these assumptions. So item 3, what? And I really just want to dive right into 2 critical areas where we see a lot of mistakes from our clients, and I see a lot of mistakes from candidates, and that's specifically the amount of assumptions you make, and also this correlation and connection to the solution, making sure that the assumptions are connected. So with the amount, sometimes we see our clients, they're giving up to 10 assumptions. It's too much and it takes way too much time. So we want to limit our assumptions. As you saw, I actually had probably 5 or 6 different concepts that I introduced, but I introduced them very quickly and I coupled them together. So if you're going to make a lot of assumptions, make sure that the amount, it's less is more, and just make them laser quick. And then secondly, what we see is this correlation connection. So one of the biggest errors is after we make too many, we don't connect back to any of those assumptions. We actually never address them or talk about them, and therefore they're not valuable. If we're not connecting back to those assumptions, they're a total waste of your time. So the assumptions help you narrow your focus, but you have to stay connected to them in correlation with the framework concept that you have drilled down on. I know that's a lot to think through, but assumptions are going to really get us focused and get our interview focused to help and allow them to see us in the role. Okay, so we figured out the challenge areas. Now it's kind of, well, what do we say when we're making assumptions? And so one of the best ways to make assumptions is to correlate it back to your clarifying questions, because foundationally, those are such good concepts to focus in on. So in any area, we want to focus in on that new versus existing piece. It's a great assumption to make. You're going to drill down on the one that's easier for you to do and the one that's more likely in the role. Like if you're a pre-sales engineer, then you're going to focus a lot more on new relationships. Whereas if you're a program manager, for example, maybe you focused more on existing relationships. But that relationship based, and that could be based on a client, it could be based on a relationship, it could be based on, is it a new process, strategy, initiative, program, migration? These are all good high-level concepts to build off of a couple of assumptions. Then you want to think a little bit more, maybe from a technology perspective, from an industry perspective, even from a where are we at in the overall journey, and that could be process, strategy, technology as well. These are some high-level concepts to think through, but we really kind of tie back to our clarifying questions. That also makes this nice cyclical approach when we're thinking about our assumptions. Item 4, when. So this is also a huge challenge area for our clients. And so let's just quickly address the 2 biggest mistakes that we see. So one is, when our interviewer does actually provide some clarification, we will bring in assumptions right away. Okay, so I'm going to assume this, and we're starting to add some additional context really early on into our answer. And that could be a challenge because we don't have all the data yet. But the most common challenge area we see is bringing in the assumptions before the framework. And even an organization like a Google will recommend that you clarify and then assume. But the framework is really going to set the stage. And so it's so important that we don't bring in the assumptions before the framework, and here's why. Let's go through and go back to that specific example. Remember, we wanted to talk about ease of use. Well, if we had provided all of those assumptions before we mentioned ease of use in our framework to Sue, Sue might say, you know what, I'm much more interested in focusing on security. Can you focus in on that item? All of a sudden we panic because we think, wow, it would have been much easier to talk about security If we were really thinking about maybe an existing customer, maybe they're more regulated like financial services, so Sue can come in and present that additional piece of data. She can kind of change the way you think about things. And that's why we table our assumptions till after the framework. We want to get all of our data out before we make our assumptions. It will be incredibly valuable for you, and you'll always essentially know that you're headed in the right direction. Item 5 is the why. I think it's pretty straightforward, but I just want to spend a minute getting a little repetitive and drilling down on this item just a little bit more. And so assumptions help us narrow our focus so we can be more specific in our solution and give our interviewer a better visual of us in the role. Without assumptions, we are going to stay very high level and likely jump around quite a bit. But if we make a few assumptions, it's going to really narrow us down. Remember, the high level stuff is the framework. So the framework is I know my stuff. Then you're going to take that one framework concept and make those assumptions and drill down. It's not just for you. It helps you stay organized and focused, but it helps your interviewer visualize you in the role. And there's really nothing more powerful than your interviewer literally visualizing and walking through the steps with you. And assumptions, again, will get you narrowed down. I really hope this video helps. This was prompted by a ton of client work, and the assumptions are coming in at the wrong stage. In probably about 90% of the conversations that we have, we're going to see at some point during the practice interview somebody bringing up assumptions at the wrong time, and it's a mistake, and it's something that we absolutely want you to work on and fix. I know it can be kind of tricky and complex as much as we drill down into these open-ended answers, but I want you to have tremendous success with these types of questions. I really hope this helps. If you have any questions regarding assumptions, please comment below. And if you like our overall content, please subscribe. Thank you.